Hey again. It's Friday, September 23rd, and it's 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, at least from what I can tell from my Top Gun jet here. So you must be on Shally's Alley. Well, I'm flying over Shally's Alley right now, but so today I have a unique guest, and the reason I'm saying unique is because Shawn and I met under kind of unique circumstances some time back. And ever since then, I've just had kind of a man crush on him. So he's getting embarrassed now. So I want to tell people kind of the story how we met. Is that okay?
Sure, please go ahead.
All right. So I have this contest that I run occasionally. Haven't done it in a while. Called the World's Greatest Sorcerer Competition. There's been like 3 or 4 of these over the years. Typically, I use money from a sponsor to pay for the prize, because what I like about the World's Greatest Sorcerer Competition is it's actually a cash prize. So I want to reward people for their time, and I want to have it be something that they can do not during work, so they can, like on the side, maybe make a little bit of cash. So you don't do it every year because I just can't find a sponsor every year for it. But anyway, long story short, this might have been the second or the third contest, World's Greatest Sorcerer Competition. And I'm looking at the leaderboard, and up comes this guy, Recruiter, what was it? Recruiter SMV or something like that?
Yep.
Yeah, Recruiter SMV. And I'm like, what is this Recruiter SMV? What's going on? And I saw this trickling up and up, like in the leaderboard, just kind of going up and up. And I'm like, wow, okay, keep an eye on this one. And lo and behold, he actually gets second place in the competition, which is really hard to do. There were like 1,000 competitors, and I think towards the end, about 500 people were still hanging in there, fighting to get the. Remember, it's a cash prize, so there was money on the line here. Um, and Shawn took second place, so I reached out and I'm like, dude, who are you? Like in a good way. Like, where'd you come from? This is great. I love it. This is exactly why I was doing this, because I wanted to meet people that were just creative and had solutions that nobody had thought of, and that's partly why actually why he won. So that's how we met, and then ever since then we've been in touch. I've tried to recruit you a few times unsuccessfully. Just timing hasn't worked out. So obviously you're one heck of a damn good sorcerer. But I wanted to ask you something on the show, if you don't mind. What motivated you to enter the competition in the first place?
Yeah, really good question. So I was working at Best Buy at the time, on kind of a seasonal position, and my boss actually let us know about it. Apparently, I hadn't been clued in to, I really think that competition kind of pivoted me in my career as a sorcerer. To kind of just being kind of a relatively newer sorcerer to really learning about the industry, learning about colleagues, things like that. But yeah, my boss, she's like, hey, sorcerers, there's this World's Greatest Sorcerer competition. Why don't you enter? And I think it was the last day to enter, the last hour to enter.
I didn't
And
know that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
it was last chance, and so we all kind of hopped on there, and she's like, yeah, take the next hour. So it was really nice of her. Really appreciate that she cared about our progression, career progression, and things like that. And when I got in there, I'm like, because I was doing kind of sourcing hacks at the time, sorcerer.games, things like that, hackathons and little fun things. I'm like, this will be easy. This is just like the other one.
Yeah, and then you're like, this
No.
is not easy.
No, it was much more complicated than I thought. But I learned a lot too, which was it was a fantastic experience overall.
Did you actually think you were gonna win the money?
No, not a chance, not a chance.
But yet,
um,
you got to second place. That was cool. That was really
yeah,
cool.
I figured if I could get through that first round, that first qualifying round, that I could have a good shot. But no way. I never would have thought second place.
Yeah, I mean, you just kept inching up and up and up, and I was like, wow, okay. It was. There were some folks like you said, just got tripped up in the first round, and that happens pretty much every time I do it. A lot of folks just get tripped up on the first round because they think it's going to be a game or a silly puzzle or whatever, but it's not. It's a real contest, and people learn. Like that's the best feedback that I get is people say I went in there and I just got my butt whooped, but I learned a lot and it was well worth it. So yeah, it's a fun time. I've been trying. Shh, don't tell anybody. Top secret. I've been trying to get SourceCon to host it again because it
Oh, that'd be
was,
awesome.
yeah, but it just has. I mean, things have been, really difficult with all the change and everything going on, and so maybe someday we'll get somebody. I don't know, HRTX or Recruiting Daily. Somebody will pick it up again. We'll do it again someday, and then you can be
Yeah.
a judge this time.
Hey, that sounds great. I just love the validation it brings to sourcing as a role, right? So
Yeah,
it really kind of
absolutely.
puts it up
Which
there.
is interesting that you bring that up because you and I have had this conversation on several occasions about sourcing kind of being the redheaded stepchild in the TA industry. Do you still feel the same way?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think I was a searcher 10 years ago, right? And back then, it was just kind of a new kind of fangled position. It wasn't, a lot of companies wasn't
Dude, I've
really
been doing it for
sure.
25 years now. I'm really
That's true. That's true. I mean, you created it, right? So you even
yep.
know even further back than I.
What we
But
know now as the, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's come a long way. It really has evolved into kind of its own function, into providing value for an organization that you can't really get anywhere else, right? Not to mention, obviously, the strong DEI initiatives that all companies have. So, being able to put a foothold on that and bringing, data-driven insights into the talent acquisition
Mhm.
world. But I still get people, oh, so you're like a junior recruiter, kind of
Oh
taboo.
God. Yeah.
That's a bit of a pet peeve of mine.
Because it
You
really
know,
isn't. It's not. I was a recruiter before I was a sourcer, and honestly, it is today still my philosophy. So much so that I took this to the International Standards Organization, ISO. I was a
hmm
member of the US ANSI, American National Standards Institute, representing the United States in the global ISO community for talent acquisition. And I brought sourcing to them as a distinct profession.
well,
And when I, they make you present when you're bringing up an idea like that. They make you present in front of all the officers to vote on whether or not this should become a standard. And I had to present in front of everybody why sourcing has to be its own standard. And the questions were all about, well, isn't sourcing just like, I want to grow up someday and be a recruiter? It's like junior recruiting. It's like, no, people that are really into this, they were a recruiter first. And I maintain still today that a sourcer is first a recruiter who then chose to specialize, like in a lot of other professions where you start out as a generalist, right? You do carpentry and then you develop a skill and ability and interest, a style or whatever in, I don't know, chairs, and then you become like the world's greatest chairperson, right?
hmm
That's what the world's greatest sorcerer is about. It's not the world's greatest entry level person that's going to one day become a recruiter, right? So it is definitely, you start out with recruiting because that's the general field. And in recruiting, you specialize. Some people are sales recruiters, some people are technical recruiters, some people, right? And in marketing, you specialize. Some people do marketing lead generation, some people do advertising, the same thing. So sourcing is a specialization, but still, I constantly run into that. It's a junior, entry level job that anybody can do. It's funny how they think anybody can do it, which is offensive, but also at the same time true, right? Like
right.
anybody could source, but not just anybody could source. You have to have an aptitude, a mentality, a tenacity. There are things that you need that you don't need to have the experience to do it. You can learn it, but there's some fundamental core competencies that allow you to be able to learn it. And once you start going down that path, you got a long way to go. I'm still learning. It's 25 years, and I'm still learning and creating new things. This is definitely not. How are we going to remove this stigma, man? How are we going to get us out of the junior recruiter bucket?
Well,
What are we
that
going to
actually
do?
reminds me of a good story there. I was
Huh?
interviewing with a company, and the hiring manager just very plainly told me, anybody can source. I don't need someone. I can hire anyone and they can source for me. I need someone who can do outreach. And
Right.
I was like,
Right.
well,
Like,
with
wait a minute.
all
What's the
due
difference?
respect, Mr. Hiring Manager, I would have to disagree. And you're right. You're right. Anybody can do it, right? The way I like to think of it, and hopefully this isn't too pretentious, but kind of like chess, right? Anyone in a few minutes can learn how to play chess, right? And understand the rules of the game, and they can do it. But that skill ceiling is unlimited, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's a good question. How do we kind of erase this taboo? And I think it's just bringing value in our role, right? Bringing unique value that recruiters can't or don't bring in the role, right? That data-driven insights, the pipelining, right? The deep diversity sourcing or creative outreach and sourcing, and then kind of sharing that in presentations to the business. I think that's maybe kind of part of the PAP. Well, I don't know. What do you think? I know that's
Well, yeah, I think so. Results definitely, right? Number one, results. That's for sure. So you can't make the case that it's its own profession when it is not producing what's expected. But I think also it's on the other end what's expected, right? For example, sourcing can't solve every problem. If you've got a broken interview process, and you're yeah, I'm not gonna name any names, but let's just say it rhymes with oogle, and you have a broken interview process that requires somebody to go through like 7 levels of interview and a panel interview and all this stuff. I mean, that's like gauntlet. That's like it's an admissions program, not a recruiting program, right? It's like, how do we eliminate candidates as fast as possible? Sourcing is not going to solve that, because eventually you're going to put everybody through the meat grinder, and everybody's going to have been interviewed in that horrible broken process, and they're all going to be like, I'm not doing that again. That was terrible. That was like so depressing and detrimental to my self-esteem, because I got beat up. And maybe that's what they were going for, but that sourcing is not going to solve that problem, right? Diversity is another one. Sourcing is not going to solve your diversity problem. Sourcing is a tool in recruiting, like it is in a lot of other things. But if you are an all-white male company, you can't just hire a sourcer and say, "All right, bring me some diversity candidates here. Let's go." Come on, where are you?
6 months. Let's
sorry,
go.
you can't bring in a diverse candidate and have the diverse candidate show up for the interview and go, "I am surrounded by people that are not like me, and there's nothing in here that looks like me." Sourcing is not going to solve that problem.
Yep. That's when I interview for jobs, I always look at C-suite, VP suite, executive level, and take a look at who is there, what strides, how long have you been in business, and what strides have you made in diversity, what have your challenges been, and if they don't have a good answer, I'm out, right? Like you said, I can't be bringing in talent that is diverse and they have no one to look to be, perhaps get a mentorship from. It makes my job 10 times harder. So
right. Yeah. And it's not like you got to have the problem solved in order to start solving the problem. It's really more about, you got to be doing something about it. And as Dina Davis, one of my favorite people in the industry, she is truly, I think, a visionary in diversity, and should have a lot more spotlight on her because of her just sharp wit about diversity. And she likes to say, it doesn't mean you have to have diversity to get diversity. It just means you have to be genuine about what you're doing. So if you have zero diversity right now and you want to create diversity in your organization, admit it. Just say, hey, we right now don't have diversity, and please help us solve the problem. We would like for you to be a pioneer, and we will do whatever we can to try to make things right and make you comfortable so that you can help us with that. But what happens is, a lot of times it's very disingenuous. The company goes out and says, "Oh, we have ERG programs." Yeah, in name only. And like, they're saying they have diversity, but they don't, and that doesn't attract the right people. If you say, "Listen, we really need diversity. We recognize the need. We know it's immensely valuable. We know it's the right thing to do. We just don't have it. Let's help us." People will respond to that. I mean, I would personally, I would
I
respond to
agree.
that. No,
Yeah.
so
I
it's not
think
just
the
that.
lack,
Go
the
ahead.
lack of transparency is so tough.
Yeah.
I've been in a lot of companies where you get stonewalled when you even ask about what is our diversity, right? Oh, well, HR is pulling those numbers. We'll get that to you eventually, right? And then you never hear from them again. And you try to do your own visual analysis, but that's never strong enough. And it's like, hey, I would love just some transparency. If we're not there, we need to acknowledge it, right? That way we can make
Yeah.
action plans and work
Right.
towards fixing it. So,
We're working on it. Exactly.
yeah. Mhm.
So, do you feel like the hiring managers have a role in this,
In
in
diversity,
helping? Yeah. Well, in both diversity, in this, in solving the challenge of we don't have diversity, but we need to get it. Let's be transparent, and also the challenge of how do we e- elevate sourcing to be not just a junior job. I mean, it's already been done. There's lots of sourcers that are very senior and very specialized. But how do we does the hiring manager, in your opinion, has the hiring manager evolved much since we started recruiting many moons ago, or not?
yes and no. Yes and no.
Okay.
I think diversity is everybody's responsibility, right? Also, with referrals, is everyone's responsibility. And referrals, in essence, are a double-edged sword, right? Generally, people will refer people who are like themselves, which
Right.
is,
Hmm.
doesn't really help. It can sometimes, especially in smaller companies, startups, can cause an echo chamber. So I always like to encourage hiring managers or colleagues to maybe try to provide a diverse referral from time to time, right? And that generally helpful. And we could do things like sourceathons and diversity focused sourceathons with hiring managers and things like that. I
Hmm.
think they have evolved in, and then when we talk about a hiring manager, what is that? That's pretty much
Good question.
everyone that's not a recruiter, right? I mean, um,
I think that, yeah, let's put a fine point on that. I think anybody that is responsible for supervising an employee or a staff member or a team member is really a hiring manager or a potential hiring manager. There can be, I can see where there can be supervisory positions where the supervisor is given the team and they didn't hire them, right? So that to make that distinction is, you may be a supervisor that didn't hire or doesn't hire, someone else hires for you and assigns you the team. But if you are definitely in a leadership position where you're leading a team or supervising a team, I think the expectation is that at some point you'll be selecting your own team. So you're maybe a hiring manager in training. I think that's the
right.
distinction, is anybody who's responsible for um, managing other people as direct reports is a hiring manager or a potential hiring manager.
Yeah, and before you meet a hiring manager, they could be at any level, right? They could,
Yep.
maybe this is their first hire ever, first time ever even working with a recruiting team,
Right.
or it could be someone seasoned, right? And I think that's part of the challenge of being a sourcer. But I think as far as one way hiring managers have evolved is that they do focus on, they many of them understand the importance of diversity. Um, you
Okay,
know,
got it. So
some
they
of
they
them,
know it. They just Okay.
I think some of them still have kind of a transactional mindset about it. Like, okay, my team is,
Hmm.
you know, 80% white. Well, we need to add another
20%,
10%,
whatever.
yeah, or
Right.
whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which may not be the best way to think about it, but
No, the best way to think
I
about
guess
it
it's a
is, what do
start.
we need to add? What do we need? Not let's just inject whatever. So it's what represents our market, what represents the population. There's things that you can ask that. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. But I mean, I think what may be lacking in some companies is hiring manager training.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Hey,
just
interviewer
a
training. Right.
interviewing training. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Both of those.
that's
Both of
right.
those.
Oh my gosh, that
Um,
reminds me. I love this story. It reminds me of a hiring manager that I was back when I used to attend interviews with the hiring manager. This was quite some time ago. Like I said, I'm pretty long in the tooth. I've been around for a while. So there was a time when when it was still required that if I brought somebody in, I escorted them from the lobby to the hiring manager and sat through the interview with them, and I was like the HR representative in addition to being the recruiter. But anyways, so this candidate came in and they were a diverse candidate, but let me explain what I mean by diverse candidate. They were a male and the position is like 99% female. Not only were they a male and a female and an all female population primarily, um, and it just happened to be it's a profession that's predominantly female. I mean, there's that happens. And so we were trying to get some diversity in there, but they were also a veteran, not just a veteran. I mean, a veteran is good enough. Like obviously anybody who's a veteran, I mean that's awesome. But on top of that, they were a veteran of a war, so they were a war veteran
Wow.
and they
Actually
were a
served.
disabled war veteran, like
Hmm.
a person with a it was like, this is mega diversity right here. Anyway, so I'm so proud of myself for like really bringing in just like bringing in the gold, right? It hits all these marks. And one of the first questions the hiring manager asks when they're looking at the resume, um, they're like, "Oh, so I see here that you were discharged from the military. Why were you discharged?"
Oh goodness, no.
Like, oh my god!
I'm gonna let
I
you
didn't even
finish, but let me step in there.
I couldn't even jump in fast enough. It was like this
Oh my
guy,
goodness.
my candidate had, I'm sure, encountered that before because he had an answer ready made, and
Mm,
he definitely did not need to answer that question. I mean, you know
no.
that. He
Right.
definitely did not need to answer, and he really shouldn't have. But the answer that he gave was a really good answer. It was so quick that asked and answered that I was like, let it. Yeah, I had to let it go because anything else that I
Yeah.
would have done would have drawn attention to it. Later on, though, I took
Right.
the manager
True.
to the side, and I'm like, so listen, asking a military veteran the reason for their discharge is like asking a female if they're planning on getting pregnant anytime soon, or asking a black candidate if they're Baptist and go to church.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you just these are some things that you just don't. I mean, this is not none of your business. Like, A, none of your business. B, there's so many laws that are in effect here. Americans with disabilities, equal opportunity. I mean, there's like you violated so many laws by asking that question. It is a private
Right.
medical thing. More than like we don't even know. We don't
Yeah.
even. But that's the thing is we don't need to know, right? It's not something that we need. It's not something that we need to know in order for this person to do the job. You know, that period. But then on top of that, there's like the fact that it could be a medical issue, whatever. Anyways, I can't tell you what he said, but he answered it very eloquently, and he got the job. So
That's awesome.
it worked out. But I was just like, I literally my heart just dropped. I was like, oh, you didn't. Oh no, you didn't. And
Yeah.
it just
And
comes
that.
from training.
Yeah.
He had no idea. In fact, the hiring manager thought it was cool. It was like, "Oh, cool, this is great," and it was like a positive. But still, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's cool or not.
It's not relevant, right?
It's not relevant. It just don't you
Yeah.
don't do it.
And
You
that
don't do
that's
it.
a constant conversation. I mean, I've even had to have that conversation with other sourcers and recruiters,
Mhm.
saying
Yeah, there's
like,
really
"Hey,
not training in that. That's true.
we can't hire a white man for this role. It'll make us look bad, right? Okay, but what about a gay white man? You know,
Yeah,
you think about that. Are they any less
the
diverse than
non-gender binary. Yeah,
or
exactly.
something else,
Yeah,
right? And it
or
that
over 50,
that I
or
really
a
don't
white
like.
male from another culture, or I mean,
Right,
yeah, so many. Yeah, skin color is one factor of diversity and may not even be in many cases the most significant factor. I mean, you can have people that have the same skin color, same skin tone, and have completely diverse opinions from the whatever you call the majority. And that's the problem is that the majority is we're trying to get diversity is representing the marginalized groups. And that may be different in different areas. In the case that I was talking about, 90 whatever percent female um, team members, it's there's a diversity of opinion, there's a diversity of perspective there that needed to be addressed, and that could be different in other situations in other cultures and other environments. So fundamentally, you're looking for that instead of basically just skin tone. I mean, which
Yeah.
is, I hate to say this, skin deep. I mean, it's superficial, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I get
Absolutely.
it. Well, that's been a very interesting discussion. Um, totally off topic, but I know that you had originally
A little bit.
talked about you wanted to come on the show and talk a little bit about OSINT. So let's
Mm.
kind of turn the tables and switch into OSINT. By the way, what is OSINT and how does it spell?
OSINT, Open Source Intelligence. And I think Dean was on your show here once before, and he described it very well. So I'm going to try to add to that a little bit, but it really is using the internet to investigate. Perhaps that's a little bit of a short definition, but using everything on the online to your advantage when doing an investigation, and then that investigation might be finding out more about a candidate, right? Um, yeah, I found them on LinkedIn. Okay, do they have the website? What other sites are they on? Where do they hang out at? And so I think it's very closely aligned with sourcing.
Yeah.
However, traditionally it's used for things like police investigations or, government investigations, things like that. But you start to get into coding and scripting, kind of some of the more advanced topics for sourcing, but it is a very powerful tool.
So basically, what you're saying is that we've been doing OSINT. I've been doing OSINT for 25 years.
Exactly.
Because I think a
Exactly
big part of
correct.
what sourcing is and what we do is utilize information that is open and readily available. I mean, it's not always the case. Obviously, I'd love to have. I give my sourcers tools that are paid, therefore not open source, right? I'm assuming if you have to pay for it, it's not open source, right? It seems like open source would be something that you can access freely without any barriers. Um,
There is some open source software that does have paid,
okay,
but for the
got it.
most part, you're right. Mhm.
Yeah, so that's been. I mean, obviously, like I said, I want to have tools. I'd like to be able to afford them, but if you don't have tools, you can still do open source intelligence. So, give me an example. What is in your mind? What is like? Is it legal? First of all, to do that?
As far as I know, it is. I think OSINT really came into general view with social media when Facebook and Twitter, everybody has one, right? Um, you know,
Some kind of account.
my profile pic on Facebook may not be as flattering than others, but everybody has a profile some way or another. They're online. They're sharing information about themselves, and there's an online persona or profile that you can capture about just about everybody. So I think that's kind of where it really came about. But an example,
Yeah, an
if
example.
you've heard of the organization Bellingcat, I think they
Uh huh.
really publicized OSINT and the powerful how powerful it really is nowadays. They used OSINT to discover who crashed Malaysian flight 517, I believe,
Mm,
over Ukraine. And so, no one was really sure about who it was. Is it Ukraine? Is it Russia? Was it just a failure? And they used online sources. They used video from Twitter. They used video from Russian soldiers who were posting driving the missile launcher through Ukraine, and taking photos, taking all the information they can gather to create Google Maps, things like that, uh, to gather and make an investigation and come to a conclusion that no other news outlets could come to. So
wow.
I think that the potential there is just uh, you know stronger than any other form of investigation. So it's really exciting to kind of follow along with that.
That's Bellingcat.com. if you're wondering. Um,
They have
yeah,
a
I'd be
movie.
familiar.
They got a book. They got a lot of great things there. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely have actually met them in Netherlands when I was there
Oh
in the
wow.
Netherlands. Um, and yeah, so I'm familiar with them. I just wanted you to kind of give us an example of what it is. And I think some of what you're talking about also sort of crosses over into what I've been talking about, which is SOCMINT, SOCMINT, which is social media intelligence. And it's a kind of specialization within OSINT. OSINT can be a lot of things, right? So you've got conceptually from I don't know, back in the day, if you want to say it that way, or um, in the olden days, there has always been some sort of um, OSINT in that, for example, the clandestine services, the government agencies that are responsible for keeping tabs on what other countries are doing that might be a threat to their
Mhm.
country. Sometimes they're three-letter agencies or whatever. They have these intelligence desks, as they're called, that are responsible for gathering information. And one of the tools that they have used for a very long time is open source. It just wasn't really well known in the public as that's what it was called. But basically, here's what it is: there's a guy or a gal or a person, an individual, or maybe even several that are in country in that other country and are responsible for listening to the radio because there might be news on the radio that isn't on print or you know um, talk on the radio. And I'm talking about not just like the main radio, but like listening to a bunch of different radio stations and even the small ones and the local ones, because people say all kinds of things on the radio. There might be another person whose responsibility is to read all of the newspapers published in that country. If
Wow.
it's a big enough country, there may be a lot of newspapers. Maybe I'm sure in Russia there's lots of people that read the newspapers because again, the local newspaper, the Peachtree Corners rag, might have some intelligence that's interesting and actionable. So that's open. So they're reading the paper, they're listening, they're watching TV. There's somebody whose job it is to like watch all the different channels. Somebody whose job it is to listen to um, broadcasts and so on. So that is has always been open source intelligence, and where it comes from is the abbreviation for human, which is human intelligence, and that's the other
Hmm.
side of it that is not open source. That's where they develop assets that are people that are insiders that communicate what's going on in behind closed meetings. That is the opposite of open source intelligence. That
Right.
is
Right.
closed door intelligence.
Hmm.
That is the other type. And so Humint and OSINT were two components of gathering intelligence. And guess what? We're in the intelligence gathering business in sourcing. We're in the intelligence gathering business, and we're also in the information management business. We have to gather all this intelligence and organize it, and we analyze it and we present it. What is it? It's information about people. We got to figure out where they are, how to get to them, find out who they are, put packages together, contact them, and then analyze it, select the best ones, and put them forward. It's the same thing that people do in all kinds of other information management and information gathering jobs, like journalism,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
It's the same thing. So yeah, absolutely. Now I deviate a little bit, but SOCMINT, for example, SOCMINT is about utilizing specifically these social media destinations. A million and one ways to um, find out what's going on Twitter or Pinterest or Instagram, and so on. So there, it's search engines, it's applications that listen. And what's so different about it is that it's much more real time and it's a lot more high volume. A search engine, for example, is not really necessarily very well equipped to listen into every tweet and every
Right.
post on Pinterest or whatever. So that's why there exists some OSINT. Have you played around with that?
A little bit. Yeah, I know that that's a really good point. Real time, right? I mean, that really is what Twitter is, and there's a lot of Twitter scraping tools that you can use. One thing is for conferences, right?
Yeah.
Love hashtags, right? Hashtags are great.
Right.
So if you know a conference, let's say an AWS conference, and you're looking for some cloud developers, well, now you can kind of use tools to kind of snoop those hashtags in real time. Hey, everyone, I'm here at AWS conference. Boom. That's just another easy in
There you go.
that Google search engines aren't really gonna find. And they might find it way after the fact, after it's been indexed, or maybe
Right.
not at all. Maybe it's a more private tweet with a public hashtag. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's right. And Google's really not. They themselves will admit they're not there to gather the real time information. Their job is to try to organize and catalog the information
right.
that's relevant to their users, and something that is a passing tweet may not necessarily be that relevant. So, also
Yeah.
Twitter. I don't know if this has changed. It's been a while since I looked into it. Doesn't necessarily access, or I shouldn't say, Twitter doesn't allow access to their historic data. I think search engines can only index 7 days at a time.
Hmm.
So if you want to go back into the historic data of Twitter, you have to actually pay for, used to have to pay for the API. Some search engines don't do that. Bing, I know, does or used to. So that if you're on Bing, it can actually go further back, but they still only get, I don't know, 30 days or something like that. So there's still, there's a reason why you might want to use a specialized Twitter search engine that pays for full access of the entire API.
Yeah, I used to have a Twitter tool, so I'm trying to pull it up right now. It looks like it is down.
That's
It
the
would
other thing
let
with
you
open
kind of
source
search
intelligence.
through historical tweets. It is gone.
Snapbird.
It was tweetbeaver.com.
Oh, okay. Is
They had a
Snapbird
bunch
still
of
around?
Twitter tools that would let you kind of go through historical tweets, but it looks like that is gone forever. So yeah, it's a little bit more difficult now. Um,
Let me see if snapbird.org is still around. No, they're
I
not.
should probably go through all my sources and kind of clean them up a bit. It's been a little
Yep.
while.
Well, one that I still use quite regularly. Not, definitely not every day, but it's on my list of places to check when I'm going deep on something. Is Board Reader. It's literally just boardreader.com. Board as in bulletin board, and it's a community search engine that reads through
Oh,
forums and online communities that are essentially threaded like boards. You might remember from
hmm,
the olden days. Um,
sure.
online discussion
Yeah.
groups. Yeah, so you put in a topic in there, like, I don't know, Golang or um, Python or something like that, and it'll go back to all these different boards and look for advice and people asking questions and answering questions on, like, Mac developers groups or Go developers
Hmm.
groups and stuff like that. So it's called Board
Love
Reader.
those. Okay, cool. I'll have to
Specific
give
that
that
specific for
a try.
like, I'm saying technology words, but Board Reader would be for, it doesn't have to be for technology. I mean, there's boards for medical, there's boards for scientific, there's you know all kinds of stuff. So that's an example of something.
Yeah, yeah. If someone mentioned in the chat here, follower wonk for
That's right.
Twitter analysis. So
That's
interesting. I'll
right.
have to try
That's a
that as
really good
well.
one.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if this is helpful. It's something that I just recently found, but Feedly.com,
How are
it
you using it?
lets you it kind of lets you choose, industries or
No.
keywords or just topics and kind of, how Google has news.google.com and it'll kind of create a feed for you. Well, this is kind of a more privacy focused feed that you can kind of set up yourself. They have a free version, they have, a paid version as well, but it could be a good way to kind of keep in, on top of the industry that you're recruiting for. Maybe you could use it for layoffs, right? And kind of tracking layoffs through groups like that, or through sites like that. So I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but I've only recently
I've
started
heard of
using that.
Feedly, but I hadn't used it for that. Definitely.
Yeah, I want to try to find out some more creative. I've done it for sourcing to kind of keep track of sourcing news, things like
Mm.
that. But yeah, I'll have to do a little more research on that and come back and share
You ever
what I
use
learned.
yeah, please do. You ever use Social Searcher?
I have not. Tell me a little bit more about that.
It's another one of those kind of listening, similar to Board Reader, but where Board Reader focuses on discussion groups and boards. Social Buzz or Social Searcher, wow, Social Searcher. This is why I don't work in radio. Search is it's free. You can pay for some features, obviously, like email alerts and things like that, but the basic one is free. It searches through all kinds of destinations. So, for example, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Reddit,
That's cool.
Dailymotion, Tumblr, Vimeo, VKontact, Flickr, and it will summarize it for you in kind of like
Wow.
like a Trello board type thing. And in addition to that, so it's not just an aggregator, which is what I just described basically. It also
Hmm.
has the ability to look for filter, like show me stuff with links, stuff without links, stuff with video, stuff with status updates, like I am at this conference, stuff with photos, positive comments, negative comments, like I hate Java versus I love Java, like that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool. Um, and you can also set up, even for free, you can set up a couple of continuous pervasive searches that run all the time. So it can shoot you an alert. I think there's a limit to how many you can get for free, but it's still pretty decent. One of my best uses for this is to figure out where to go. So a big challenge for me in sourcing is when I don't know a particular whatever, my first question is, where are these people, right?
Yep.
Somebody comes to me, a hiring manager comes to me and says, I want FUBU with flapper people. Okay. I have no idea what FUBU with flapper people are. I'm totally using gibberish here. I'm like, what,
Yep.
so I'm going to go to something like Social Buzz and just be like, FUBU flapper, what is this? And then it comes up with like the websites that people are talking about that. And then I'll see, for example, oh, look, there's a bunch of Tumblrs about this. I know, right? Tumblr. It's like if it's like I don't know what else is like Tumblr that was I can't even remember the name of it, but and then
I know
it's
what
the
you're
light
talking
bulb goes on. Oh, Tumblr! I could check out Tumblr. Or oh wow, there's lots of information on Reddit about this. There's more on Reddit than there is on Twitter for this topic, and vice versa for this other topic. So it's a good place to do that and just discover where people are talking about this particular whatever. Even so much
about.
as it gives you users. So you go in there and you type in FUBU with Flubber, positive sentiment, and user filters, and you end up with a list of popular users that are possibly positively talking about FUBU with Flubber. So now you got the influencers on Twitter and Reddit, the actual users. Talk about sourcing, you know?
Yeah. Hmm.
Now,
That's
these may not be
amazing.
the people you want to recruit necessarily. You don't want to recruit Bill Gates for a Microsoft job, but
Right.
if they're the influencer who's following them, who's reading them, who's commenting, who's not commenting, who's linking, cross-linking. So that is SOC Mint in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think one thing that when it comes to sourcing, like you said, the conversation that I have with all my hiring managers is, where do I find these people? Right? Your network is much more, shaped around these type of candidates than I am. Right? And I know that they're not on LinkedIn. Right? Everyone praises LinkedIn and they love it. I hate LinkedIn. Unpopular opinion. I hate LinkedIn. I really don't like it.
I don't think that's
And I know
unpopular.
the people that I'm looking for don't hang out there. They just don't. So where do I need to go to find out where they're hanging out at, and
Yep.
how do I engage with them? And wow, I'm definitely going to try social
Social
searcher
searcher. Yeah.
to do that initial research, because yeah, usually I go to Stack Overflow, GitHub. I do technical sourcing, so Google user groups is a fantastic place to find candidates. Although many groups have emails that are redacted, but there are ways around that. I've worked with
You can
my
guess, you can figure it
colleagues.
out. Yeah.
You can
Cross-linking.
reverse image search their user profile. things like that. There's ways around it, but yeah, that's a really big key piece of, and not only that, but hey, where do I advertise, right? Where do I post
Right,
my
marketing.
jobs?
Yeah, finding and marketing, two
ZipRecruiter,
sides of the same coin.
sorry, not going to work, right? Yeah, where can I post a job? What, Slack user groups can I post my jobs at and get the biggest ROI? So yeah, that's just another good tool. So cool. Really, first time I've heard of Sock Mint. I'm gonna have to do a little more research on that.
I didn't invent it. I promise. I didn't. I didn't
I
make it
wouldn't be
up.
surprised if you did.
No, I didn't make it up. I use it a lot, but it's just it's a little bit more real time than OSINT, which can also be real time, but a lot of OSINT is somewhat historical, right?
Yes,
Some of
correct.
OSINT is looking in archives, and it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be that. It could be 6 months old and still be very useful, very relevant. Versus SOCMint is more like what's happening, like zeitgeist, what's happening right now.
Yeah,
Somebody from Facebook, it might be Glenn. I'm not really sure. I'll have to figure it out. Just posted this. LinkedIn has its place, but it's a crutch and disservice to our industry at this point. Not to cast dispersions, but to follow up on what you said about LinkedIn. Not everybody's on LinkedIn. There's a very first of all, there's huge skepticism about that. People say, well, no, I can find anybody on LinkedIn. So there's the right and wrong on that. So that was David Marr. I see. Thanks, David. The right and wrong is you can find almost everyone you need. So you can find a lot of people, and you could probably find most of what you need. But but what is absolutely not true is everyone is on LinkedIn. That is not true. It's true you can find lots of people. It's true you may be able to find enough people to fill your positions, maybe. But it is completely not true that everybody is on LinkedIn, and that is a fallacy that I fear has been perpetuated um, because of laziness and because of greed. All
yeah,
you have to do is check the data. Like, ask the question for yourself, right? If there
yeah.
are, what is today? What is the working population of the United States? In other words, how many uh,
Mm.
able to work? How many able and eligible to work people are between whatever the age is? I don't know, 16 and retirement age. So looking at that, um,
Probably
it,
pull up
I
BLS.
know the
Yeah,
number is, yeah, I
statistics.
knew I knew it was about 168. Okay, here we go. It's 207 million right now. That's not the population of the United States. That's the
Right.
population of people that are not children or retired out of the workforce. The size of the workforce is 207 million. Well, if you go to LinkedIn and you ask the question, how many profiles are there in the United States? You're going
Yeah,
to get a different answer, right?
yeah. Irina
Have you
has
ever
a cool way of
have you ever
doing
done
that.
that?
I have, I have. Irina had a really good way of searching for. I don't recall it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that Twitter and Facebook both have more users than
Hmm.
LinkedIn by far.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if you have a LinkedIn recruiter seat, it's super easy. All you got to do is go to the LinkedIn recruiter and say um, United States as the location, right? And it's going to come back with 180
Mhm.
million profiles. So 200 and what did I say? 207
Yeah,
minus
you get
180.
20%, 25%
There's Well,
there.
hold on, that's 27%. But wait a minute. But wait, there's more. So they're saying LinkedIn is saying that there's 180 million users on LinkedIn in the United States, although we know there's 207 million working Americans. However, out of those 180 million, how many are duplicates?
Right.
We don't know.
I saw you had two profiles. I need to add your duplicate.
I have a duplicate, right? And I have a duplicate because I have to, because LinkedIn told me
Hmm.
about 15 years ago that I couldn't have more connections than what I already had. They set a
You
limit that
broke
you
it.
cannot have more than 30,000 connections at a time when I had 60,000 connections. Explain
Holy
that one to
smokes.
me.
Yeah.
So I've had to cull down my network for years to try to get to the point where I can add more. So I just created a second profile. Um, and then there's duplicates that are unintentional, like, shoot, I forgot my password, or I no longer have access to that email and I can't recover. So they create a
Yep.
second one, or they forgot they even had one in the first place because they created their profile 10 years ago and now they need to create another one. So there's a reason for that. Um, and not to be sad, about this, but you know, the population does decrease for organic biological reasons. Um, people die,
Yeah.
and it's a fact of life. So 8% of the population in the United States passes away every year, right? Now the population growth is exceeding that 8%, but what does that tell you? Is in 10 years there's a cumulative 80%
Right.
of the population that has churned. So
Right.
how many of those 180 are duplicates, intentional or accidental? How many of them are fake,
Yeah. Oh, tons.
right?
Yep.
And how many of them are people that are no longer around? We
Or
don't know
abandoned.
the
Yep.
answer to that, but it's definitely not the same number as 180. It's actually a lot less than that.
And
And
that's
then
yeah.
go ahead. Yeah,
Oh, I
what
was
were you
gonna
saying?
just quickly say that's the other point. Just because they're on LinkedIn doesn't mean you can message them there, right?
They even check
There's
their message.
many, unmonitored inboxes that they just have it to have it, right? Maybe if but they're not going to answer your message just because they're on there. So, but yeah, sorry. Please continue.
Oh, I was going to say, do a search for example, one of the smaller population states, like I don't know, Rhode Island. I don't know what the population is of Rhode Island, but I'm assuming it's probably one of the smaller states, right? So if you
I would
look
think
in,
yes.
yeah, I'm kind of guessing that it is. It may not be as small because it's densely populated,
Let me. I'm running it here.
right? So the way the other side of this is the population of Rhode Island is roughly just a little bit over 1 million. But if you do a search in LinkedIn for Rhode Island, you get 400,000 profiles. So that's
Yep,
less than
that's what
half.
I got. Yeah.
It's less
Yeah.
than
Do you
half.
do you really think half of Rhode Island is on LinkedIn?
No, I know half of Rhode Island is
Right.
not on LinkedIn, and I
Right.
also
Yeah.
know that 400 is definitely less than 1 million. So not everybody's on LinkedIn. Period.
Right.
Like that, there's no
Right.
arguing with that. It's right there. So I agree with you. But that's why we do OSINT and SOCMINT. Oh,
Yeah.
Wyoming is the
Okay.
smallest one. 130 million. Oof. Oh wait. Oh, sorry. No.
Yeah. I think Wyoming may be the least populous
Yeah, it was that somebody
state.
said. I think that might be David Marr. Uh, would be a
It's,
good guess. That's
it's
interesting.
about
How
two
many?
hundred thousand.
Oh, really? Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful state.
And how many
So,
of them actually work?
well, that's the other good thing. Yeah. I mean,
Working
how do you
age,
even
right?
search for that?
So well,
Maybe,
um, the state of Wyoming has a working population number of 292 on their .y.us website. That's
well,
292,000 in Wyoming. So now let's see how many are on LinkedIn. 200,000 on LinkedIn, 292,000 working population. So that's 92,000 people in a very small big state, but less low population state.
yeah. I
So
mean, that's a
yeah,
third right there,
yep.
right? A third of people are not on the
Somewhere
most
between half and a
popular
third of
recruiting
working
site.
Americans are not on those websites. Yeah, they're not on those websites.
Yeah. So where
So
are they? Right? How do I find them? Yep.
Ahmed Osint,
Yep.
call Shawn. Call Shawn to find out.
Agreed.
There you go.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
let's wrap things up. Shawn, is there anything that you want? I always like to close out with, your a parting comment. Is there anything that you want people to think about? Um, in our industry, something that help them motivate, focus, something that you can share, a moment of
Hmm.
spontaneous wisdom, if you will.
I think if you feel like you're having a conversation and it's uncomfortable, you're probably doing the right thing. So
Hmm.
have more uncomfortable conversations with your colleagues.
Wow, damn, that's a boom. I wish I had a sound effect. That's a deep one. That's a good one, yeah. Because what you're saying is, if I may interpret, if you're having an uncomfortable conversation, you're probably learning. You're probably doing something you haven't done before. You're probably doing something that may be worthwhile. Hopefully, it's not uncomfortable because you're being a jerk. But
Hopefully not. Yeah.
right, that's what I'm assuming. Is it? It's
Yeah.
not the reason.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't be scared to learn. Don't be scared to learn.
Oh, check this out. Sagar Subramanian says there's a website for generating SQL queries to find developers in Stack Overflow. Yeah, I mean this is
Yeah.
sourcing. It's finding people in the nooks and crannies of the internet where they are.
Yeah. Stack Overflow actually has their own backend for SQL queries. So I learned this from my colleague from my last company, Keith. I'm going to mess up his name. I'm pretty sure it's Keith Richards. But he showed me how to, yeah, Stack Overflow has a backend to do SQL queries, which is nice because you can bookmark it, right, and save it. Unlike a normal search, which changes each time you do it, you can
Right.
kind of have a replicatable
Of
search
that. Save that
with that
search
query,
destination.
and then you can extract that maybe to a database, right?
Wow.
Which I know you do. I know you used lots of tools to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So somebody's asking what's a good resource to learn about SOCMint. There's no K in that, by the way. If you want to look it up, it's SOCMINT. I'd say, Shawn, you go first with OSINT, and then I'll do SOCMint, and then we'll wrap it up. Thanks for that closing statement, by the way. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say,
Where to go
Bellingcat
learn?
really does provide a good, kind of a primer to it. They have a
Bellingcat.com.
documentary about
Okay.
it. Yep, yep. And I think Dean DaCosta. I haven't read it myself, but I heard he has one of the highly regarded books about it. But I know, Charlie, you have some websites around it as well.
Yeah, I've got a Start Me page that has a bunch of information about OSINT and SOCMint. See, I think I had that saved here. Yeah, right there. Oh, that's not the right one. Where is it?
I'm definitely going to
There it
explore
is.
that.
Yep, srcn.co/start. And from there, you can jump off to a few of the other ones. I linked to some of the other pages as well.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, this was incredibly fun.
You're right. Time did fly by.
It did, right? Yeah. Yeah, Shawn was all worried, like, I don't know what to say. Like, don't worry, it's going to go by quickly. Well, thanks a lot,
You're very
man.
easy to
Everybody,
talk to. So yeah.
yeah, you too. Have a great weekend, folks, and see you back here next Friday.
Thank you. See you later.